Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bateman? Mr. Blair?
Here.
Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Ori?
Here.
Mr. Phelps?
Here.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Here.
Welcome to the Vice Mayor. Glad to have you here.
I'm always glad to be here.
If we could, Mr. Bateman is traveling for work. Would entertain a motion to excuse him from this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Welcome, everyone. With us tonight, we have our Director of Finance, Mark Bedler, our Clerk of Council, Misty Brent, City Manager, Dave Kennedy, City Solicitor, Joe Braun, Assistant City Manager, Tom Smith, and our Chief of Police, Sean Ray, former council members, Todd Osborne and Pat Mays, and Dave Bednar. I think I've got everybody. Welcome, everyone. We were going to have a presentation by the LSFD that is on hold. They will not be presenting tonight, which brings us to open forum. We do have 11 people signed up for open forum, so I'm just going to remind everybody how this will work. Each person is given 5 minutes to speak. You'll notice in front of Ms. Brent is a little panel of lights. When the light turns yellow, that means 1 minute. That is when you wrap it up. When it turns red, you are finished, whether you are in mid-thought or not. It's the only way I can think to be fair and respectful of everybody's time. So when you see the yellow, you know you've only got a minute left to go. Following, we're not going to take any comments, questions from council members in between speakers. Following open forum and all 11 speakers, at that time, each council member will be given 5 minutes to make any comment they wish to make regarding anything that was stated by any of the individuals that spoke tonight. I will remind everyone that pursuant to council rules and also as written on this agenda that I do have the ability to restrict duplicate testimony on any one subject, so I would ask that you pay attention to what those individuals ahead of you are speaking regarding and what they say, and try not to duplicate what is being said. All right, with that, first is Kim Lukin.
Church.
Right there.
So then what? I don't see the 5 moving.
When you start talking, I'll start.
Oh, okay. I'm here to discuss the annexation of the property owned by what I understand one owner. And I question on why the annexation was even put into the thoughts of you all. I wonder if the citizens had an opportunity to even discuss the need for annexation is one point. And then another point is I just spoke to Claremont County's Commissioner Painter for quite a long time, about 2 hours ago. And he shared with me that that property for decades, he thought was in a holding spot that was more agricultural consortium kind of usage of that property, and that the landowner, wanted that, and that they were good with that. They didn't have any problem with that, and it was good for that property to be like that for years, or I thought he said years. So anyway, so I question why this landowner is searching and seeking out. I guess it was my understanding that it's the landowner's right to go to other places to change his ability to possibly sell the land. And so I question when that happened, how that happened, and I would assume that the landowner came to you all, some of you all, and discussed the possibility of changing the type of annexation that you need as that is being proposed, that you think you all need. So that goes back, I wonder then, did anybody know about the possibility of this one landowner coming to you all and discussing this possible annexation that we all weren't even knowledgeable that you all thought it was good for us all? So I know that the annexation is an expedited annexation. That means that, I don't know, there's 7 different parts of the annexation, and I know that it is literally sitting on the commissioners, Claremont County's commissioners and authority to sign. It is going to be a done deal because you all have made it be that way at this point without us having an opportunity to intervene through quite a bit of processes to get to this point. And I was also told that when it gets to an expedited aspect, that the public is not required, that you all are not required to allow the public to come in and talk about that part of the annexation. So honestly, what I'm asking you all is to literally show us this contract, to print out a duplicate of this contract and to renege it, to stop it, to pull it back. And I think that if you all choose not to do that, I think that there should be hundreds of people to go to Claremont County and to wait for, it's supposed to be on the table at 10 or 11 a.m. tomorrow, and just to show that we do not support this type of process from the very beginning of why you all even thought that that area needed to be annexed into our area. So that's what I think. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Deirdre Dyson.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Deirdre Dyson. I live at 430 West Loveland Avenue. I've lived in Loveland, I discovered to my horror today, for 53 years. I knew it had been a while, but it's been a pleasure all those 53 years. I wish to talk to you this evening about Grailville, not about legislation and annexation, but just about Grailville itself. I question the idea that residential development of the property is inevitable. Grailville is a classic gem of Victorian residential architecture. Many other unique buildings on the property include a dining hall designed by William Schickel, a venue for recitals, weddings and events, trails, and much more. I understand and respect that Grailville wants and needs to sell the property, but I suggest their needs could tie in with satisfying one of Loveland's greatest needs of the moment. In spite of the recent and terrific great growth and revitalization, there is one area, one item that is sadly missing in Loveland. It needs accommodations. I imagine many of you have tried to find a place for out-of-town guests within the ambience of the town. Not easy. There is an opportunity here, I believe, to transform the buildings into an absolute gem for the city, community, and area. A boutique hotel, bed and breakfast plus. Could the city actively seek a different kind of developer or group to purchase and restore the property with integrity and vision to honor its historic value? Other towns of Loveland's size have renovated hotels, ornately painted mansions, emphasize architectural detail. Grailville offers all those possibilities and more with attractive landscaping and walking trails. Just imagine how delightful it would be to stay in Grailville's renovated plush bed and breakfast rooms or hotel, go for a walk on the woodland property, then explore downtown area for canoe, bike trail, and restaurants, etc. It would not generate traffic congestion like putting 250 homes in that area would generate. Water and sewer demands would be a fraction of the proposed development costs. If you have never set foot on the property, let me say I'm not the only person to feel that there's something very special there. You can feel it immediately you get on the property. It exudes an aura of calm and tranquility, what so many of us are seeking these days. Surely there must be some entrepreneur or company out there looking for such an investment opportunity to purchase, to renovate, as business opportunity that would serve us all. Please don't let Grailville be just another discarded jewel in the history of what used to be a quaint and unique town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dyson. Lauren Enda.
My name is Lauren Enda, and I'm a resident of Loveland. Like many residents, I'm concerned about the proposed parking garage and its effect on Loveland's heritage. The garage, if built, will change the very fabric and trajectory of our town. Once our heritage is destroyed by big city solutions like multi-level parking garages, we will never, ever get it back. City Council has not initiated a referendum on the largest municipal project in Loveland's history, which makes many ask, why not? Concerns are based on the following. Number one, residents have not had a voice in this conversation. We will be forced to live with changes caused by the garage to Loveland's character and to the natural environment that we love and that attracts so many. Residents should vote on whether the project will proceed. If the location, design, or economics are unsuccessful, the garage will be a blight on our quaint downtown, degrading the town's ambience forever. 2, the Loveland parking situation has not been properly studied. No data exists that outlines whether additional parking is required, and if required, how many spaces are needed. The city has provided no evidence, other than anecdote, that parking is a $7 million issue. How can the council possibly come up with any solution, especially one that costs millions of dollars, when the issue hasn't been properly defined? 3, neither has City Council commissioned an environmental impact study. Paved surfaces are one of the major causes of flooding. Coupled with the increased number and severity of storms we are witnessing in Southwest Ohio, this garage could make runoff and flooding worse. Some towns are removing paved parking areas to increase green space, which absorbs water runoff, thereby decreasing the risk of flooding. Why has the council not taken the precaution of an environmental impact study to protect our downtown? 4, cost estimates the city council is using could be grossly underestimated. There are no actual quotes. The firm who came up with the $7 million price tag called it an opinion, not a quote at all. Their opinion clearly states that they have no control over the cost of labor, materials, or equipment, or over the contractor's methods of determining prices. With the COVID pandemic, we have seen inflated costs and severe shortages everywhere. These costs would add even more to taxpayer burden. And council's new idea to use the $1.3 million coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund to help cover costs of this project is misguided at best. This fund is meant for and needed by businesses in Loveland who are actually struggling. Why is City Council not using that money to help them instead? 5, the proposed garage is a permanent solution. Loveland is not a big city. The garage will sit empty for much of the year when it is raining, snowing, or cold, and when businesses are closed. However, the eyesore will not disappear just because no one is parked there. Accompanying lighting will be on 24/7, adding to light pollution that detracts from the beauty of our natural spaces. 6, there is no guarantee, data, or correlation that this garage will decrease traffic in the downtown area or that it will create and retain good-paying jobs. Most of the traffic for Loveland will still traverse the downtown area from the west to access the garage. Only traffic from the north and east will access the garage without entering the downtown zone. It's a very expensive plan for unknown benefit to traffic abatement and job creation. I am not against additional parking if studies indicate is required and other solutions are investigated, but most importantly, residents are offered a referendum. I am against a burden placed on residents without their approval for a project that has not been properly evaluated for necessity, environmental impact, cost, job creation, or traffic abatement. Residents deserve to know what criteria were used to make this project a priority. Loveland is not and does not wish to be an urban center. The proposed garage will negatively and permanently alter the look and feel of Loveland's most prized asset, our natural historic downtown. I ask that Council commission the necessary studies to protect our heritage. Once Loveland has information in place of conjecture and anecdote, then Council should respect the citizens of Loveland enough to allow us to vote on the parking garage plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Scovanner?
Hi, my name is Sharon Scovanner, and I live at 155 Overlook Drive. I've spoken recently with numerous members of council, including Mr. Ori when he stopped by my house to give me some literature. Also Mr. Bateman, who also came to my house last week so we could talk further about annexation. I've also spoken recently to Mr. Blair at the committee appreciation dinner, and also Mr. Butler. I spoke to him there as well. And there's been a lot of debate, and at times we've agreed to disagree. This disagreement is not negative. It should not be considered a negative, but a way to understand each other's point of view. I have also had productive meetings, discussions with Dave Kennedy, and I appreciate his time, Tom Smith, and also Mark Medler. And I appreciate all of the time that I've had to speak with you. I consider the best results always when there is dialogue, each person defending their positions, and that's how democracy works, when it's working well. Governing bodies succeed when there is open sharing of facts, discussion, deliberation, and at times compromise. A couple of weeks ago, all the city council candidates were invited to attend a meeting at our HOA meeting, and Mr. Butler, Hart, Phelps, and Ms. Lukens attended, and we appreciate them for coming. At our meeting, there was spirited debate about the development of Blossom Hill, as well as the annexation of the Grail property, the proposed parking garage, all of which have significant impact on traffic, especially in the area of Warren County where we live. Mr. Phelps and Hart took a lot of tough questions, and it was kind of putting your feet in the fire, and we appreciated them standing in there. As the residents were really concerned about the disproportionate detrimental effect each of these developments would have on the residents in Warren County. Hopefully they heard the collective and heartfelt voices of the residents. Mr. Phelps stayed after the meeting and talked further about the issues, which was most appreciated. He suggested that I add my name to the agenda of the next meeting, and we would be able to discuss this further. So I attempted to do so. Rule 19 of the Loveland Council states any person, group, or delegation wishing to be placed on the agenda is to appear before council shall direct a letter to the clerk, and it must be received no later than 12 noon on the Thursday before the meeting. So despite following Rule 19 specifically, I received an email from Misty, the clerk of council, that read, Sharon, Mayor Bailey has declined your request to be placed on the agenda and suggested that you speak during open forum. Wow. If Mayor Bailey doesn't want to hear from the citizens of Loveland, maybe being mayor is not for her. According to Rule 19, the mayor has no authority whatsoever to deny a request to appear on the agenda. Just because the mayor doesn't like what a citizen has to say does not give her the right to try to silence them. If you look at the organizational chart of the city, one and only one group is at the top, and it's not the mayor, it's not the city council, it's not businesses or developers, it's the citizens. This is the top of the chart, and it's the citizens. Allowing active participation of the citizenry should be the goal of any functioning democracy and should be insisted upon by all who are in the position of power. In 2017, a group known as the Loveland Community Heartbeat PAC, led by Mr. Ori, who, according to his signs, is our community advocate, initiated a recall of Mayor Mark Fitzgerald. And the grounds for the removal were conducting city operations and meetings in a manner which prohibits full participation of all council members, resident involvement, and transparency. And number two, willingly and flagrantly exercising authority and power without the consent of the residents, electorate, or city council. 2017 was a dark time for the city of Loveland, and Mayor Bailey is returning us to some of those same dark days. Over the past few months, Mayor Bailey has prohibited full participation of all council members and resident involvement by, one, denying my request to be on the agenda, to try to limit my time for speaking from 10 minutes to 5, even though I was invited by Mr. Phelps to be here. Telling another resident, Dave Stanton, that he couldn't speak, only to be admonished by Mr. Braun, our law director, because she
That's time,
overreached.
Ms. Scovanner. Thank you. Tom Scovanner.
Good evening. The Grail has requested annexation of 95 acres into the city of Loveland. This is the third attempt at this petition this year. It is currently pending before the Claremont County Commissioners, and in fact, they will vote tomorrow at 10 a.m. on this request. I'm asking the council tonight to withdraw resolutions 2021-89 and 2021-96 so we can better review the consequences of this annexation. Loveland has no urgency in supporting this annexation. There's no secret who's behind this annexation. A land development company, Dries has published a public press release earlier this year stating that they were going to develop this property, even though Dries does not own the property. Dries plans to build over 200 homes on 1/4 and 1/3 acre lots. That's from their website, that's from their representatives. Currently, Loveland City Council Resolution 2021-89 in support of the annexation commits us to provide police, fire, water, life squad, sewer, inspection services, planning and zoning, street lighting, and stormwater. The resolution further states that and I quote, the area will be zoned RLD, residential low density, effective upon date of the annexation, unless the property owners petition the city of Loveland for a different zoning classification and the rezoning application meets the city standards for rezoning of property. Loveland's RLD, residential low density, requires a 1 acre lot. Thus, Dries is assuming already that a zoning change will be granted, allowing for an increase to more than double the amount of homes that will be allowed. What will Loveland receive in return for this annexation? Well, certainly more traffic. Traffic being the biggest problem we have. 200 to 400 additional cars through downtown Loveland at least twice a day. Loveland will also gain some additional real property and income taxes. But the real property tax income for the city may be limited by law. Perhaps the type of annexation request being made, Miami Township will retain property tax interest over these 95 acres. The Ohio Constitution limits 10 mills to the amount of real estate taxes that can be collected without a specific levy. This is called inside millage. How exactly that inside millage property tax will be allocated between Miami Township and the city of Loveland is unclear. Based upon the Ohio Constitution, Article 12, Section 2, and a 2012 Ohio Supreme Court case, Sugar Creek Township versus the City of Centerville, inside millage is definitely limited to 10 mills. I spoke with the auditor's office of Claremont County, other lawyers with knowledge of annexations regarding the real estate tax that goes into its township and its city. No one can tell me how those 10 mills are split. More legal research is needed before Loveland commits itself to this annexation. I've done a lot of the research. Then there are income taxes, but half of the 200 homes that Dries plans to build will be patio homes, and they will be aimed at retirees. Loveland gains virtually no income tax from retirees. The other half of the population will not contribute much in income tax because where they work gets first dibs on the tax. So if you work in the city of Cincinnati, your income tax goes to the city of Cincinnati and not to Loveland. In short, Loveland will gain little in taxes and yet will have to provide police, fire, life squad, water, sewer, inspection services, planning and zoning, street lighting, and stormwater. The argument being made in favor of Loveland supporting this annexation is that this development will happen anyway. If this development would happen anyway, why hasn't Drees already started? They announced this in March of this year, and nothing has happened. Nothing has happened because the truth is they want Loveland to provide the water and sewer. Without that, this development won't happen. It is cost prohibitive to Drees for Claremont County to provide the water and sewer. So Drees wants Loveland to provide that. Loveland residents are being played for fools by another big property developer. And unfortunately, they are being facilitated in that by this city council. Everyone knows the recent past. This council has a history of siding with developers rather than the residents of Loveland. If this annexation goes through tomorrow, Loveland loses much of its leverage to have input in the development. Rather than accept the annexation now, Loveland should negotiate with Drees before the annexation. After all, do you negotiate the purchase of a house with the seller before you buy the house or after you sign the contract? You do it before. This development could be a good development for Loveland. I don't know. It could be someday. What I do know is there are too many unanswered questions now, and Loveland is not prepared for this development today. The appropriate action is to delay this annexation until more information can be provided to the council and to the residents. Please rescind Resolution 2021-89 and 2021-96 tonight. It has to be tonight or it goes through. Loveland's future
Thank you,
is in
Mr.
your
Scovanner.
hands.
I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but I hope not. Is it Dunn Charbonneau? Am I close?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Thank
What
you
is it
very
really?
much. Wow, I have to follow that.
How do you
My
pronounce
name
your
is
name?
Dwayne Charbonneau.
Oh, Dwayne, I couldn't read it.
I'm,
Okay.
Resident at 130 Overlook Drive, Hermitage Point, and I too am asking to delay the annexation. And first of all, I want to thank Mr. Butler and Mr. Phelps for coming to our meeting, as Sharon talked about. And they were very open and honest and talked to us about the annexation. They told us about what it could lead to in terms of having to provide, as Mr. Scovanner just pointed out, water, sewer, infrastructure, police, and fire. Unfortunately, why I'm here tonight, I was very concerned because neither one of them, with any conviction, could say what the advantage of this annexation would be to the town of Loveland. That's very disturbing to me as a citizen when people on, as Ms. Lucan pointed out, the people of Loveland don't really understand what the benefit is. But I'll submit to you, even two people on council don't know with clarity what the benefit is for the city of Loveland. That's disturbing, and I'd like you to consider to slow down the annexation before we get into something that we don't want to be in. You know the old saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dave Bednar?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. My name is Dave Bednar. I live at 515 Lowell Street. Been a resident of Loveland for 50 years. I want to first thank the City Council and the city for providing the reception last week for all the city volunteers. As the mayor alluded when we were there, there's 70, 80 people that volunteer their time unceasingly to make the city as great as it is. And we appreciate the efforts to express your thanks for that. What I want to do tonight is I have a simple question. The city is proposing a parking garage, and I understand the importance of this garage and the impact it's going to have on the city. But for my clarification, Mr. Butler has on numerous occasions said this is a $10 to $13 million project. Other people I've heard it's a $2 to $3 million project. So at some point in time, could we get clarity on the scope of the project, the cost, and a timetable for this, and a few of the details of what it's going to do to provide traffic relief or parking relief for the city? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. Theodore Richardson.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Theodore Richardson, or you can call me Ted. I live on Overlook Drive. I'm here to talk about traffic and in particular the effects of the annexation would have on that. I think if Tom spoke very eloquently with great detail about the situation. I am also in favor of postponing the annexation so that more study can be done. I believe that if the plan is to expand the number of houses built on that property to 200 to 250, it would dramatically affect the traffic in downtown Loveland. If the plan is to hold it to the 90 or so houses as proposed in the annexation, then I think that would be more palatable. But I would like confirmation from council members that the plan will be continued as proposed. If not, if there is any consideration that the number of houses would be increased, then I think it should be tabled or should be canceled, rescinded this evening, so that we can get better clarification as to what the actual plan is. I'm sure that Dries would like to build as many houses on the property as they can. Another thing I'd like to talk about is in relation to traffic as well. It's very common, if anyone who's driven through downtown will know, on the weekend or during festivals, the traffic gets backed up quite a bit. One proposal I've heard is to have some sort of a crossing guard at the bike trail in order to regulate the foot traffic across the road on the bike path. I'm a fan of the bike path, that's why I moved to Loveland, but it can be quite an interference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Larry Schramm.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for this forum. My name is Larry Schramm. I'm a resident of Loveland, and specifically the Hermitage Point neighborhood off State Route 48. I join my neighbors in opposing the annexation of the Grail property and the future problems that will occur with the changes in zoning and the city infrastructure. The ability to handle the increased traffic has not been measured or planned, while the current infrastructure is increasingly strained. In addition, the proposed parking garage, as it is currently planned, will not address traffic congestion and ultimately be deterrent to supporting the commerce within the city. It is my understanding that that there has not been an impartial traffic study for this project, and that possibly might lead to an informed decision. It concerns me and should concern every citizen that many decisions are made by this mayor and council without the input or interest of the citizens of this city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Todd Osborne.
Good evening, council and audience. Todd Osborne, 1100 Sunrise Drive. Let's talk about, I'm sorry, some of your information, people, is so incorrect. Look it up. It's just unbelievable. While the Ohio Revised Code details the annexation process, Loveland has its own code for after annexation. The current annexation's with one owner. not Dries, it's with Grail. And when it gets annexed, it comes into the city at zero tax. While there have been misleading statements made at recent meetings like tonight, Section 1123.07 specifies how that annexed property will exist in the city, zoning-wise. And in that can be a special planning district. But that all has to go to planning and zoning before it comes to council. And when it's annexed by the county, or they approve it, these people up here have to still approve it by ordinance. Since 2000, year 2000, there have been 15 annexations. Nobody's been here to complain about traffic or whatnot. If you want to be concerned about traffic, look beyond the railroad tracks at O'Bannon, where there will be at least one multifamily apartment complex going in because the property has changed recently. So check that out. That traffic will affect here. We have nothing to do with that because that's in a different jurisdiction. Once the property is annexed into the city, then the city has the right to control what goes on that property. I commend the city for the the downtown parking infrastructure project. It's not just a parking lot. Railroad gets changed. A whole bunch of other things get changed. And the city taxpayers are not paying $5 million. As I understand it, a lot of the funds are coming from outside the city. So we're not going to be paying as much as $5 million, $10 million, or what? Lastly, Mr. Butler, you are one of 7 individual voices. It takes 4 votes to pass legislation. It takes building consensus. It also takes communication between council members and city administration. And that means beyond these 4 walls. Unfortunately, you've not done much of that. The voters deserve better. I wish you well in your future endeavors, and I support Hart, Ori, Phelps, and Ping. And I thank council and the mayor for the celebration last week, thanking all the committee members. It was well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Neil Ori.
Good evening, council and everyone here in attendance, and also those watching via the internet. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you during open forum. Council is paying attention. All of us are listening. All of us are being fiscally responsible. And all of us are working on solutions for the parking, the traffic, and a new garage. These are the 3 most and widely discussed issues that I've heard starting back in 2017 and currently hearing today during my door-to-door re-election campaign canvassing. First and foremost, council has not contracted to build a garage. Council has not made a final commitment to build a garage. So far, we've purchased the land, the Ross property, for $550,000. That's the site beyond the railroad car at the works that the garage could be built on. We've purchased the McCoy home for $114,000. That's to extend Harrison Avenue. We've raised all the buildings. 0 cost to the city to raise the properties on the Ross property. There were, I think, 4 or 5 buildings there. Cost us nothing because Mr. Kennedy was able to get grants for us. It cost us $13,500 to remove the house and infill the McCoy lot, and we made a temporary lot out of it. We constructed a temporary parking lot on the Ross property using road grindings at zero cost to the city again. We received our first cost estimate for the garage February 12th this year, $5.989 million. We received a second revised estimate at the request of the city on October the 8th, went up to $6.293 million. The city's press release that went out on October 18th stated the cost for the garage would be $6.2 million. So far, the city has spent $677,500. Add in the garage, that total investment could be $6,970,000. Let's just call it $7 million. It's not $10 to $12 million. I assure you, we will not put a shovel in the ground until the following steps are taken. Grant funding amounts are finalized and confirmed. Construction costs are itemized and are finalized with real bids. Operating expenses are examined and analyzed. Public meetings will be held. Our residents are engaged. Dialogue is complete with full transparency. Now let me go back and talk about the grants for a minute. Mr. Kennedy is very actively working on getting us grants. We already have $1,050,000 in state grant. We have a $250,000 Appalachian grant. We've applied for $3.146 million from the EDA, Economic Development Administration. We have, to date, $688,000 in COVID funds received in July and an additional $688 coming in July of next year that could be used for the garage. Potentially, that gives us $5.822 million. The garage could be nearly built 85% unencumbered. Now, we do not know if all the funding will come through. That's exactly why we are not talking about it. It's exactly why we're not yet meeting. It's not time. We don't have all the information. When we do, that's time to do it. Now, let me talk about traffic a little bit. Our downtown is unique. We do not have a street grid like most cities. Multiple lanes going north, south, east, west. We have a square block. That's it. Okay? That in itself causes the traffic flow issues. This council and myself personally have been and are currently working on ways to improve that traffic flow. And here's what we know and what we're doing. 5 Points intersections getting new traffic lights. That'll include turn lanes. We are adding a right turn lane here by the mobile gas station, which the city's acquiring. We have and will be adding GPS trafficking devices. We are upgrading the traffic lights at West Loveland and Wall Street with GPS also. Installing pedestrian traffic lights at the bike trail that was just mentioned. Dave Kennedy is working on.
That's time, Mr. Story. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that's everyone. Now give any council members an opportunity that wish to address anything that was said, a chance to do that. Anybody wish to do so? Mr. Butler?
I think we heard tonight a clear consensus from many citizens about the annexation issue and expressing it I think very reasonably and appropriately that do we need to race into this given the fact that this is, well, we heard tonight, the third go-round of this petition. Perhaps we can take it slow, press pause, as the carpenters say, measure twice, cut once. Let's measure twice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Blair.
I want to thank everybody that turned out tonight to talk. As a council member, it's way more fun when those chairs are filled. And for way too long, we spent way too long with those chairs empty. And quite frankly, it wasn't nearly as much fun. And so I want to thank everybody for your involvement. Most of the people on this council got here through their involvement over one irritation or idea or inspiration or another. And I can't thank you enough. This is how local government works. Thank you again.
Anyone else? I would like to thank you all for coming. I agree. We're always happy to hear what anyone has to say. This is a full room, which is good. I will address Ms. Scovaner's comment. I do have discretion as the mayor to limit and to deny the right to appear before council. And knowing that this was the last meeting before the election, and is historically a large number of individuals sign up for that very reason, knowing there were issues that many wanted to discuss, seemed to me the fairest thing to do, because you're not the only person who asked to appear before council. And I would not have cared who asked to appear. If it was somebody that was my most ardent supporter and agrees with everything I ever say, would not have allowed it tonight. I think 5 minutes is plenty. We had 11 people speak. Everybody was given an ample opportunity to speak. I think that was more than sufficient and helpful, and I'm happy to have heard from all of you, but I think that was fair. With regard to Mr. Stanton, I've said that night, I don't know if you were here that night or not, but twice I told Mr. Stanton, I apologized twice, I misread the rule, and twice asked him to speak, gave him every opportunity, and was here standing at the podium and chose not to. So I don't consider that not allowing someone to speak. I gave him every opportunity. I think the only other comment I would address is that we make decisions without input. You know, this garage has been talked about for over 2 years now. We've been working towards really just trying to get as much money as we can to see where we are with this garage. Once we have that, as Mr. Ori said, we will then be having lots of conversations with everyone to determine what, if anything, we're going to do with that, what it's going to look like, if at all, where we're headed. But until we know what the numbers are, I don't know why we would have a meeting to say, here's what we're doing, because we have no idea what we're spending, if anything, at this point. We might get 85% of the money. There's a possibility even more than that if our state legislature does not take any more from us than they have said they would from the American Recovery Plan money. So we certainly intend to have lots of conversations with the public, but at the right time. And I just don't believe that we've had that right time yet. All right, anyone else have anything to say? All right, again, thank you all. We appreciate it. Next is review and approval of minutes from the October 12th, 2021 meeting. Are there any changes, comments on those minutes? Can we have a motion to approve as written?
Move to approve as submitted.
Thank you.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
The capital bill project, which is done at a state level every 2 years, that's why it's obviously called biennial capital budget. Having been involved in government for 36 years, these used to simply be, you got a letter from a state rep or a state senator, or asked, hey, do you have any projects you might want us to consider? Those days have changed, and now it's become a very competitive process where the county, typically through their port authority or their economic development agency or something, whatever, however they are made up individually, will solicit projects. The city has received Tom Carroll was able to receive some funding for what is now the Linda Cox parking lot in 14. So we've received some money in the 14, 18, 20, the biennial projects are on the even years. So upon receipt of notification that they are accepting projects, I went to Batavia, met with the people from the Port Authority, and we discussed potential projects that the city could apply for. Again, this would have to be in Claremont County. Hamilton County has not sent out their letters yet. My city engineer and I, knowing that, are thinking about projects up in the Hamilton County area that we may be able to consider for consideration for funding with the Hamilton County. We obviously try to be as aggressive with these funds as possible. With that in mind, and knowing that about the price range that I feel like we may be successful in, and knowing that park projects traditionally do very well in these capital bills, They're tangible. Your state senators can come to them. There's ribbon cuttings and so on and so forth. I thought that knowing that the city had already submitted funding for one small function of the Nisbet Park master plan, which was the gazebo going in roughly where we removed the old wooden gazebo. The next phase of that would be the proposed seating area adjacent to that, along the trail. That would allow us to continue the trail that would circle around. So with that in mind, working with KZF, I came up with a cost estimate for that phase. By the way, what we applied for the gazebo was through what they call ODNR NatureWorks. City has done very well in the NatureWorks program because ODNR, who facilitates and administers the NatureWorks program, also are the owners of the Little Miami Scenic Bike Trails. So our projects score fairly well at Nisbet because they see Nisbet as an amenity to one of the most populated portions of the trail. We should be finding out soon whether or not that project was funded. So the total cost to do all the seating, which is hard surface seating along the trail, best way to picture it would be where some of the concrete picnic tables are. I included a drawing in the packet. This is a much more desirable seating area it's more desirable for public works. It's easier to look up to mow and everything associated. The total project cost of that would be $230,695. Based upon the city's past experience with receiving these fundings, I was recommending that the city supply a local match of 15%, which would be $34,604. Those funds would be included in the 2022 budget, and just like many projects that we include in the 2022 budget that are grant dependent, if the grant funding isn't removed, they simply go away and would come out of our special projects fund. If the funding didn't require any kind of local match, I would not need to come forward. But this particular project, given that it would do that, I'm recommending the corresponding legislation committing $34,604 towards the project.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Vice Mayor?
Mr. Kennedy, one of the things that we have done over the many years with all these different grants is looking at what the city's share or local match would be. And in the past, on some extremely competitive grants and other applications, we'd go up to 25 or nearly 50%. I think you and I have talked in the past about, the fact that 15%, based on where we think we are, is a good number to put us in good position for the grant.
I feel that 15% makes us competitive. They're very well aware of the city's past history. They made that very clear to me when I showed up at the meeting in Batavia. So I didn't want to do anything inexorbitant, but I think it fits well because it's a park project, B, it supports one of the largest state bike trails around, one of the more populated. I think it has a lot of niches to it. I'm receiving some letters of support from some select agencies. If council would choose to increase the local match, that obviously can be done. Based on the budgeting and where it fits in, discussions with the Finance Commission, I think 15% is a good amount for us to show that we're being competitive with it. Discussed with Mark Medler, and yes, I guess I went around a long way, but yeah, I think 15%.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. As we had talked before, we think we're competitive at 15%, which really does protect our taxpayers' dollars to try and get a project more through grant funding. So I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? And I appreciate you bringing this to us now. We haven't approved a plan, but we know we're going to be expending money in this, and it'd be hate to wait another 2 years before we ask for something.
I
Potentially lose out on $100-some thousand, yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Mayor. You and I had discussed that while plans are important in getting them dotted and I's, and I know that's what the Comprehensive Planning Committee is doing right now, sometimes they don't always coincide with their final adoption. They don't always coincide when grant funding is available, especially on a biennial budget, meaning it'd be 2 years from now. I know you and I discussed that.
All right, thank you. Could you read the resolution, please?
Resolution authorizing a local match for the Nesbitt Park 2022 Claremont County Port Authority State Capital Bill Community Project Application.
Any comment on the legislation itself? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Resolution 97 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
I'll go ahead and on this explain why I had a table of the next item, but the State Route 48 Butterworth Sanitary Sewer Extension, of which I wholeheartedly appreciate the patience of the residents of Century Hill, Hermitage Point, Brandywine, and Butterworth Glen. That project, which obviously monopolized most of the summer, was put in to supply sewer service for the Chimney Ridge development. It was also not by the developer's choice, but by the city's choice, increased in capacity size from an 8-inch to a 12-inch main. During the time that we worked out the development agreement with with the developer of Chimney Ridge, we were going to proportionately subtract some of what we felt were more of our cost. That project was awarded by City Council on April 13, 2020 at a rate of $450,000 for a total price of $457,175. It came out of the Sewer Capital Fund, of which the city has had funding available for this project. It was all straight up sewer cap fund. Due to multiple reasons, not least of which was the city's desire to not do what was originally planned, and I didn't tell a lot of residents of this, which was just shut it down from one side to another and good luck, you were going to go all the way around. We chose to do a fairly elaborate maintenance of traffic, which was a significant increase in the cost. We also, there was underlying rocks that led to the need for additional equipment to jar through it. There was additional restoration up on Butterworth Road and more manholes and a myriad of things. But the end result is $36,816,000 change order. As my spending authority maxes out at $15,000, I'm bringing it back to council for approval of the change order as it exceeds my spending limit.
Thank you. Any comment or questions? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract change order with Larry Smith, Inc. for the State Route 48 Butterworth Road Sewer Main Extension Project.
Any comment on the resolution itself? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Resolution 98 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Do you want to say?
Just that I was trying to get the sewer assessment, which will total $440,000 for the developer's portion of the project that you just approved the change order. I was trying to get it in the current tax year, but the land consists of what they call two parent parcels currently, and the child partners, the child parcels won't be created until such time as it will be 2022 tax period payable in 2023. With that, there was no reason to bring this forth, because what it would have ultimately done, my action would have done, would have placed 1 full year of assessment just on the developer. The goal, this process was that it would be a 20-year assessment for all 30 lots, all 30 strictly for that subdivision. So I will be bringing it back when all the child parcels are created. They'll be named individually, and I will not need to do it as an emergency.
So you're seeking a motion to
It's a
table?
motion to table.
Would anyone care to make a motion to table?
I move to table.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Mr. Phelps.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, that brings us to the councilmanic worksheet. Mr. Medler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For you this evening is the third quarter financial report. Notable item from this third quarter was that the city received the first half of the American Rescue Plan funding in the amount of $688,476. The report also reflects income tax revenue being up 18.5% over the same period in 2020. The total income tax for the year will eclipse $5 million probably in early November. General fund expenditures are down slightly when compared to the same period in 2020. However, bills for road rehabilitation are starting to get paid this month, which will bring that more in line with what we expected for the quarter. Revenues in the city's enterprise fund is ahead of last year's pace, but water-related revenues are not sufficient to meet the total established in the 21 budget. Today, I reached out to another government utility provider to see how they were doing this year on their water sales. They said, like us, they have noticed reduced consumption so far this year and have attributed it to weather influencing resident usage. If the city had not adjusted the minimum water usage amount, we would have seen revenues below the 2020 amount. And those are the highlights of this report.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Medler? Yes, Mr. Blair.
Mr. Medler, to what do you attribute the 18% increase in income tax?
Well, as I believe we talked before, some people are working at home now and might be reporting taxes from that. And just, there's really no one item. As I'll talk about in the next report, there are 3 separate things that we report: withholding, individuals, and business taxes, and all seem to be up so far.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Butler.
Mark, again, in this report, we see a pretty significant reduction in investment income. Is there anything, and I think the last time when we reviewed this, you said basically the fixed rate instruments is primarily what the city uses. Is there anything that the city could do in terms of moving investment vehicles to, and I know with that goes risk, but are we just stuck with low interest rates?
Sure. We do have an investment committee that we could discuss various options with. Right now, it is basically interest rates. We did have one CD that this month had matured. It was 3-year. When we originally got it 3 years ago, the interest rate was over 3%. Now it is renewing at 0.7, and that was the best that we could find. So it is very challenging, but we can talk to our investment board and see if there's anything else.
Okay. And I just have one
I just
more.
want to comment on one.
Oh, go ahead, Ken.
So there's a rule in the investment business called prudent man theory, and it especially applies to municipalities, cities, and governments. And whereas in many cases, it may seem like the investments that the city puts its money in are ridiculously conservative. There's very good reason for that. There are things that investment committees can do, but each one of those participants on the investment committee, in addition, the city leaders as well, are subject to that prudent man rule. And so there's risk, even though it looks like these are no risk.
Put your mic on, sorry.
There's tons of risk for the individuals, and there's a reason they call it prudent man rule.
Right, and I understand the risk reward ratio and criteria, and we've seen horror stories of cities and municipalities investing in funds that they shouldn't have, and then going bankrupt. So certainly don't want to do that. I guess my question to Mark was just, are we just kind of stuck with it for now? And it sounds like that's the case. The other question I had, Mark, one of the funds, I think it was the downtown TIF, was down. Am I right on that? The amounts that were received on that?
What page are you on, Mr.
Unfortunately, I thought I had my notes here, but
packet page 45, I believe.
Is it 45?
I believe. If you're talking about on the revenue side.
Yes, yes.
Right.
And was that to be expected? I mean, is that kind of what?
I think when we put when Michelle put the budget in, they're expecting a little bit of growth in that area.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, percent change minus 7.4%.
Right, and I don't think that came in didn't have as much growth as she was expecting.
Thank you.
Any other comment, questions? All right, I think we need a motion to accept the quarterly update, correct?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Medler?
And kind of as we just touched on, for income tax revenues up 18.5% over the same period in 2020. Again, we will soon eclipse $5 million in income tax for the year, which is a first for the city. Increases have been seen in all three categories: employer withholding, business, and individual. Again, as in past quarters, I asked Dawn in our office to kind of look for anything that might specifically say, oh, is it an outlier, or is there a one-time thing that caused this that we can't rely on? She does a great job of digging through all the information that we get from Rita and everyone that files with us, and there was no smoking guns, as you would say, with this situation. We believe this is sustainable and that this is an accurate revenue.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this update? All right, thank you, Mr. Medler. Appreciate it. There are a couple committee minutes and reports. Anybody have any comments on those? Yes, Vice Mayor.
So I'm just going to make a comment about the Finance Commission and some of the meetings we've been having, and I appreciate all the work that Mr. Medler and the team have to put in. These are open meetings. I do invite everyone to come to these and see what's in the budgets. We've been having multiple sessions as we prep for our next year budget. That includes going through all our revenues, as we just talked about, and how those break down into different funds. We do talk about investments, what's the employment, with regards to healthcare costs and what's happening with regards to personnel. We also will go, and we're not done doing it yet, what's all the expenditures of the city, so that we're looking at a very balanced budget with regards to our revenues and what we're going to be spending on. Wanted to give kind of an interesting little side fact. For a lot of you, I've been here for quite a number of years. I first got on council in 1995. In the 1996 budget, I took a look back to kind of compare where we are today versus 1996. And Mr. Medler did have a really good piece of information here, right? Which I don't know if everybody caught. Our first time ever, our revenue from income taxes can be over $5 million. In 96, our revenue stream from the income tax was around $1.7 million. If you look at our total revenues that go into the general fund back in 1996, we were around $3.8 million. We're over $8 million projected for 2022. Real estate taxes, they've gone up some. They're about 10% or so of our revenue. That's about $1 million projected in 2022 versus about $460K back in 1996. So a lot's changed. We see that the city has now the resources that we never had before. I mean, when I first got on council and we were looking at police cruisers and equipment, we were itemizing maintenance bills. We didn't have dirt for parks, right? Because we didn't have the revenue streams that we have today. So there's tremendous change that has occurred in Loveland over a lot of years. And I think it's really shown to be a significant improvement. One last interesting fact, on the general fund back in 1996, our beginning balance was 0. Now, we had an income tax fund balance that was beginning around $3 million. Today, if you look at those combined, we're balanced, beginning balance is almost $6 million, if that's about right. So, just in general terms. So, just for reference, I'm just trying to give everybody kind of a sense as to where we've been and where we are, and I encourage you to please come down to the Finance Commission meetings and see what we're doing.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All right, City Council reports. I have my weekly list of events that Misty gives me. So the Tree and Environment Committee is hosting a volunteer workshop on Saturday, this Saturday, October 30th at 10 a.m. at Phillips Park, where volunteers will learn about non-native plants and how to remove honeysuckle. I believe all are invited. We did have to cancel our movie in the park showing of Hocus Pocus due to the weather a few weeks ago, but the Sanderson sisters have agreed to visit Loveland this Saturday, October 30th from 11 to 1 a.m. at Jackson Street Market. And the businesses in Brown's Crossing, which is at Jackson Street, have arranged for Marty's food truck to be on hand, as well as crafters, artists, and activities for kids from 9 to 1 this Saturday. Hope to see you there, Mr. Timmerman. Saturday night, a Willy Wonka-themed Halloween party will take place in downtown Loveland. Yes, where teams will be in search of the golden ticket. It's always a good time, and I think more people are down in town in Loveland than are actually signed up for this most times, but that's what makes it fun. Trick or Treat Sunday, this Sunday, October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. The Stage Company's production of Curtains opens on November 5th, runs through the 21st. Several downtown businesses are hosting a holiday preview sip and shop on November 5th from 5 to 8. And the Loveland Athletic Boosters will host its Fall Arts and Crafts Show on November 6th from 9:30 to 3 p.m. at Loveland High School. As with all of our events, all details and times and everything else is always available at Lovin, L-O-V-I-N, lifeloveland.com. Also, obviously, Election Day is next Tuesday, so let's not forget that. I believe that's all I have. Does anybody else have anything to offer? Mr. Butler.
Yeah, I think we heard from many citizens here today, and I think each of those citizens represent other people, their friends, their neighbors, and others who are concerned and have expressed concern about the proposed annexation. From the beginning of this process, my position has been not no, but rather let's gather information. As I mentioned, let's measure twice, cut once. So once the property is annexed, it's in the city, subject to all the services and so forth, which was discussed earlier this evening. I thought Ms. Dyson had a wonderful idea, actually. You know, that seemed like a wonderful use of that land. Could that be discussed with the property owners in advance, prior to annexation? I think so. That's just one example. We've heard concerns about traffic. We've heard concerns about what the proposed developer has suggested that their intended use of the land versus the zoning requirements of the city of Loveland and the incompatibility of those two items. There's just a lot of ambiguity, a lot of uncertainty about this annexation. I think Mr. Scovanner's suggestion that the city pause, take a break, gather the information, gather the data so that we can go into this with full knowledge and, again, a complete feeling that we can tell our citizens this is good for the city. And for that reason, I'm moving to rescind Resolutions 2021-89 and 2021-96, and not for the purposes of completely stopping the process, but rather so that we can continue in good faith our investigation of the facts and financial details associated with the annexation process.
Is there a second? All right, motion dies for lack of a second. Thank you. Anyone else have anything? All right, I believe we have a executive session. Would someone please make a motion?
I just have a short thing. The Loveland boys and girls cross country team is one of the tops of the state. In fact, the girls are rated #1 in the state. I think the boys are #4 or 5. Correct on that, right, Cassie? 5. They are competing at regionals this weekend in Troy. And if they are one of the top 4, they'll go on to state, where I think both teams have an excellent chance of placing. The girls have an excellent chance of winning. So just want to wish them the best. They're a top-notch program, top-notch coaches, and something the city can be proud of.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Again, Vice Mayor.
I move to go executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss the discipline of a public official.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
No.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1.
We're back on the record at 8:45. Could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.